Ladies and gentlemen, this is Paul. Paul, I never figured out how to pronounce your last name.
Verhage. Verhage. So it's like the rhymes with the hay.
Oh, it's the Dutch version.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
I want to say it like French.
Okay.
Verhage.
It's Dutch.
Paul has talked to us before. Paul's worked a lot with CubeSats.
Yeah, balloon sats.
Balloon sats. Has presented us some beautiful images, including one where you could see the blue of Earth and the curve with it. And then he presented it. He actually, during the great eclipse of 2017, sent up balloon sats there, and you could actually see the shadow on, was it Treasure Valley?
It was in Treasure Valley. Yeah.
Treasure Valley. He's taking, I'll let him introduce the rest of his, but he's not going to talk to us about balloon sats tonight. So he's got a different angle.
So,
Paul, give us your background though first.
Okay. So I'm a math and science teacher, physics degree. I teach at the Treasure Valley Math and Science Center in Boise. So I teach a lot of nerds. And when I was growing up, I was a nerd, but these students out-nerded me by far. So I learned one thing is you never confuse your Marvel from your DC comics. There are two different groups, you keep them separate. Once I've done altitude ballooning, in fact, this t-shirt went up on a weather balloon during the eclipse to 90,400 feet. So I got that embroidered on the shirt there. And I'm trying to do more stuff with getting out and doing some more astronomy stuff. And, unfortunately, my father passed away. I got a little bit of an inheritance, and I used that to buy a robotics telescope. I like to talk about that telescope. Kind of what's going on with that. And I think this is going to be the way of the future. I think we'll see more of this, and just different astronomical societies may want to start investing in telescopes like this as part of their public outreach. So, I mean, I do not sell these. I don't work for a company or anything like that. It's just that I've been using it, and I really love it. It is an amazing telescope, and like I said, I think this is the way things are going into the future.
So does it come with the rabbit?
Does not come with the rabbit. This is a life-size rabbit for scale. This is my rabbit Babs, my house rabbit. So I brought her, put her out there just to get a little, kind of a scale. I mean, this telescope is so simple, even a rabbit can use it. Let me put it that way. It's that simple. Okay, you good to go? Okay, next slide, please. Okay. All right. So this presentation, I've designed it for the public. I mean, all the way from people who are just beginning astronomy, don't know much about astronomy, to people who do a lot of astronomy. So I'm trying to write it so there's a lot of information that spans the whole width of astronomy. So we'll start this with, this is how it all began, 1609, with the first telescope. This is Galileo's telescopes. Some people think Galileo designed or actually invented the telescope. He did not. It was designed and actually invented in Holland. Several people discovered it, Hans Lippershey for one. This was the time for the telescope to be invented. People have been using glass for glasses for a while, and finally the glass quality got good enough for optical systems. And bam, right after that, telescopes were invented. Galileo heard about the telescope from not a politician, but a statesman, an ambassador from Holland. And he was smart enough to figure out how the telescope worked. He designed his own telescope. He was not the first one to turn it to the sky. That was actually done in England first, a few months earlier than him. But he did turn it to the sky soon afterwards and actually wrote down his observations and published them, which is what made him really the important person in the history of astronomy, as he actually recorded the observations and printed them and published it in Italian for the common person in Italy to read. And that was really the biggest thing he did. And the discoveries he made showed that the sun was the center of the solar system and not the Earth. So that kind of eventually got him in trouble, but partly because he made it accessible to the public, and not rather than writing it as hypothetical and putting it in Latin, which is the language of the learned people at that time. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to go forward about 360 years. The next big thing that happened now, people were using cameras and film cameras before this, but this telescope does not use film cameras. So I need to skip that and go to what's the next evolution in telescopes that leads to this telescope here. And that's the invention of the CCD imager. So 1969, hard to believe, all the way back to the moon landings when the first CCD images came out. And I didn't realize it. I thought they were more recent than that. But it took, decades before they became accessible in cameras. So 1969, the Bell Laboratories. Okay, next slide. The first telescopes were alt-azimuth, altitude azimuth elevation type mounts. But then everybody went to the polar mounts because they want to do long-term tracking using film cameras. As you go back into the about 1970, they started, the alt-azimuth mounts started being available again because it's a way to make large telescopes accessible to more people. Dobson and sidewalk astronomers started making them really popular. But with a telescope of this design, it was really easy for people to get large telescopes and then not spend an arm and a leg for a mount to use the telescope. Because once you've got your telescope, what good is it if you don't have a mount for it, right? So John Dobson actually helped promote this style of mount. And back in 1970, they started to return again, even though it was old hat, because the first telescopes were all alt-azimuth. 1990s microcontrollers come out. So this is a computer on a chip. And before that, computers were vacuum tube, they were large rooms, that kind of thing. But now they're solid state, they're put on a chip, and you can actually write code for them, and they can start doing useful things. So starting in the 1990s, you start getting these go-to mounts, for instance, alt-azimuth in design. It knows its location through a GPS. It knows the time. It then points the telescope in elevation and azimuth until it points at the object. It can actually track the object using an alt-azimuth mount. So that becomes available starting back in the 1990s. Again, this is an important step that leads to these robotic telescopes like we have here. 1991, the CCD imager or the CCD cameras started becoming really popular. They were expensive, so you could buy books and buy kits to start assembling your own. In fact, I started to build a kit with this CCD imager, never got it done, but that's okay because 20 years later, I'm buying CCD cameras anyways. But if you go back to early 1991, the first book came out on how to build a CCD camera, and you could actually buy machine aluminum parts, the CCD imagers, the electronics. You could put your own CCD imager together. And it's just amazing to be able to take digital images because there's a lot more you can do with that post-processing than you could with that. Then the first Stellina comes out, put all these pieces together. And in 2014, Sidewalk, I will not try to pronounce his last name. He is French, so it does not pronounce like it would in English. Sidewalk was looking at telescopes and said, we need to make telescopes a little bit simpler. So starting in 2014, they started to make the first prototypes of this type telescope right here. Okay. Then 4 years later, the first Stellina goes on sale. And now the telescope, they have a little X-ray view of what's going on, a lens, a mirror to turn the image 45 degrees, and then your imager or sensor on the outside, imager on the outside. Starts to become available in 2018. 2 years later, pandemic hits. You can't get these because there's a backlog in manufacturing and whatnot. But eventually it gets cleared up and they're starting to become available. So 2018, this telescope design only 3 years old. Okay, the design is so innovative that it's won awards. So Nature Discovery Award in France 2016 for the design. CES, if you've been to Las Vegas in January, was it in January, right? I think it's around early January. To the CES show, you'll see the new electronics coming out. So it won an innovation award back then. 2019, 2 years ago, and I'm not sure what the Red Dot Design Award is, but another award for this design, 2019. So it's been winning awards ever since this it was announced and the prototypes were out and actually became available and people were starting to buy them. Here's what's inside of a Stellina. You have an 80mm, 3.1 inch EV or extra low dispersion glass refractor. So it's a refractor. F5, 80mm. It's a driven out azimuth mount, so all it has is it can drive itself horizontally, vertically, and then rotate. It's an image rotator. So one of the problems with an alt-azimuth mount is if you follow the star, since you're not aligned with the pole, the image in there is going to rotate. So there are ways to get around that with an image rotator. If it goes at the focus, you put the focuser. An autofocuser, this is not unique. I mean, there are autofocusers out there. You hook up a camera to a telescope and it can look at the image. Or you get your SDLR or your digital SDLR camera and you can have it do autofocusing for you. So this is standard technology. All of these are standard technology. Light pollution rejection filters, those have been available for over 20 years. And people beginning these filters, again, common everyday technology available at the time in 2018, putting these all together again. Dew heaters, keep the dew off the lens. Again, that's something that's commercially available. The designer's name, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, but anyhow, there's the dew heater in there too to keep the dew off the lens. Uses a 10 milliamp hour, 10,000, that's a 10 amp hour, not 10. Anyhow, it's a 10,000 milliamp hour or 10 amp hour battery. It's a typo I got to fix now because this is all electrical. This is all electrical. You take it out, you slap in your battery, and you use some astronomy. The imager is a Sony imager. And my understanding is this is a very popular imager for astronomy. So again, use a popular imager to do this. 6.4 megapixels, so 2,000 by 2,000, so it's a decent size image. This quad-core processor, I've been told, I need to look this up, but this is a Raspberry Pi computer, is my understanding. It is just a standard Raspberry Pi computer. So, you know, Raspberry Pi computers, you can buy them, some Raspberry Pis for like $20 or something, fairly inexpensive computers. Has a built-in Wi-Fi, does plate resolving. I'll get into a little bit more about that shortly. And then does automatic guidance, and then also stacks the images for you. So all of this is kind of standard technology, but all put together for the first time in the telescope, and you get a robotic telescope. So I'll get into some more detail. Okay, so why do we do this again? This part will go back to, for the public so they understand why we do these things. This extra low dispersion glass, you use that to get rid of chromatic aberration. The first telescopes that came out, so Galileo's telescope, for instance, he had to stop down the lens. So, I'm not having a good time, but they just don't realize there's people that hear that need to hear. So again, this is what I would share with the public so they understand, well, ED, why would you do this extra low dispersion glass lens? Why would you do an apochromatics? So I'll explain real quick. The first lenses that came out, simple, it would be plano convex or double convex, double convex lenses. The glass doesn't refract all colors of the spectrum at the same amount. So you end up with some colors focus well, some colors don't focus well. And you get this color shading across the object. By using extra low dispersion glass and then doing 2 or 3 lenses, in fact, in this case, it's apochromatic, you get rid of that. So images are all the colors are focused, and you get sharper images that way. This telescope has 3 degrees of freedom built into it. We have the azimuth, actually the elevation, I can rotate it down the azimuth, but I can point it, but also there's an image rotator inside of here. And the reason we do the azimuth is that it's a very simple design, very inexpensive to build, but also makes for a stable telescope. If you look at large telescopes beyond 5 meters like Mount Palomar, they're all going to these azimuth designs because the mirror or the telescope is so heavy that to design a polar mount for it would be even more complex, plus a very, very heavy and expensive mount for the telescope. So go to the azimuth designs. My understanding is that when Russia, Soviet Union made their 236-inch telescope, they went out azimuth and their design was so bad that they couldn't use the telescope. But modern telescopes, they have much better designs for their out azimuth mounts. But the problem with that is that as you track an object, the object in the telescope will rotate. So if I'm looking at the moon and I keep watching it for 5, 10, 15 minutes, the image will slowly rotate because I'm not tracking it as the Earth rotates. I'm actually moving it azimuth and elevation. But there's ways to get around that, and you do have a field rotation. So I got a picture here. The Gemini telescope, there's 2 of them now, 8 meters across. This is the image rotator. So all the instruments get fit into here, and this thing rotates to account for the image. It rotates opposite of the, or it rotates with the object to follow the object. So once you've got an object locked in there, this will rotate the optical instruments you have, cameras, spectroscopes, whatever you have. So it'll track the image as it rotates, and you don't end up with the image rotating in your camera. Okay, next slide. This is an example of an image rotator used for amateur astronomers. So this would plug into your telescope, plug in your drive control, put your camera here, and this has a motor in here that rotates whatever's plugged into the ring here. So this does the rotation for your telescope. So if you're going to track an object, you're going to take an exposure, and the camera, let's say it's going to record for 10 minutes, the camera will rotate to follow the rotation of the object through the telescope. So again, commonly available image rotator in this case, or field rotator. Okay. Now, the one problem with the field rotation, this is something that does run into with the Stellina, is that with the Raspberry Pi computer, sometimes it has trouble rotating all three axes and keeping up at the same time. That tends to be a problem when objects are straight up. When things are getting really close to the zenith overhead is when the rotator, azimuth, and elevation all have to change as fast as possible and has a little trouble tracking at that time. But this telescope, with its stacking image, you actually look at the image, determine if it got a good image or not, and if it couldn't quite keep up for a moment, it won't stack that image. So this will take images every 10 seconds, look at the quality, realizing it has a problem keeping up with near the zenith, and will throw out images and not stack that images for you. Okay, go back one. So this autofocus, the Stellina uses what's called contrast detection. It looks at the pixels and it wants to see the greatest difference in contrast between the pixels. I want to see really bright to really faint over a small number of pixels as possible. When that happens, you know that you're focused. Now that takes time. It does. It takes time for the Stellina, once I turn it on, for it to get GPS lock, which it gets through my cell phone through the app. And then it will actually sight the sky. It'll focus on stars. And it takes probably about 5 minutes for it to get locked, for her to get locked on the stars. Now, if you're using a digital SLR camera, you can't afford that, right? You can't afford to be tracking wildlife and taking 5 minutes to focus on the wildlife. For those cameras, they use what's called phase detection, and they'll actually split the image, and they want to see the phase between the two halves of the image look the same. Then you know you're properly focused. So digital SLR cameras use a different method to focus that's much quicker. But Stellina uses a simpler one because it has several minutes of time available for it to do the focus. Okay. Light pollution injection filters. You're all familiar with this, but for people who potentially could watch this in the future and not familiar with that, this is a lens that uses different layers of materials on the glass that creates destructive interference between light waves of certain frequencies, primarily those that are emitted by street lights. So good transmission at 400. Right here around what, 575, we have low transmission. This is mercury, I believe mercury vapor lights right in here. So this will help block the light, interfering light from things like street lights, but still let the starlight through. So we block the light that we don't want to see and let the starlight and nebula light come through. Dew shield. This is just electrical heater. It's just a little band around the lens itself that warms it up just a little bit so the dew doesn't want to settle on it. It wants to find someplace else to settle on. And when you do that, because if you've used your telescopes or looked out your windows during the wintertime, you've got that condensation on the outside, you can't see worth a darn. So by putting just a little bit of heat on the lens, we keep the dew off and we keep getting sharp images even as the temperature keeps dropping. It does take 2 amps to run the telescope, so you need to kind of watch your battery. On a cold night, you got to put more heat on that lens. You will run down your battery more quickly.
Did I miss something? What kind of battery does it use?
LiPo batteries. This is the 10 amp hour battery that comes with the Stellina.
Okay.
But I have bought a 20 that I use. It doesn't quite fit in the telescope, so it hangs out a little bit, but it works just fine. You can also plug it into an outlet. So if you're outside, run an extension cord to the telescope, get the battery charger 5-volt.
How much time do you get with a charge on that?
So with a good charge, when it's not too cold, I can get 5 hours on this battery. My larger one's a 20 milliamp hour. I can get 10 hours on that one, which is basically photographing only. So yeah, so 2 amps. So 10 amp hour battery, 10 divided by 2, so you get 5 hours on it. So 5 hours on a good night with that. But it can run down sooner if it's really cold and you need to kind of keep that lens a little bit better. Okay, so 2 amps. This takes some power to run this telescope. The imager, so this is the, again, I'm not too familiar with imagers yet, but this Exmor August is the imager they use with the Stellina, and that's apparently a camera, or imager used with other astronomical images. And this is a color imager. It's not just a black and white with color, where you have to change your color filters. It actually uses a mask in front of the imager itself. It gets two greens, one red and one blue, and then all those pixels get mashed together. So it's actually higher resolution than you get from the final image, but because you've got to combine two greens and one red and one blue pixel together. But it is a good, so again, still pretty good quality, 2000 by 3000 pixels across. Pretty good resolution on that. With the optical system, with the F ratio and the diameter of the lens, it gives you about 1 arc second per pixel resolution. And then the field of view, only about 1 degree by 0.7 degrees. This is not a telescope made for taking a wide field of view. It is made for really zooming in on stuff. And I'll show you some pictures. But there's a way around it because this telescope is all software run. That means I can get an update to it and the telescope will run completely different. So that's the amazing thing is that you say, well, limited resolution, I want to look at, all of Andromeda Galaxy. There's a way to do it. So it's all software defined. Okay, next slide. It does plate resolving, and this is something that is being used in some telescopes today. This is fairly recent as far as I understand, but this telescope has star maps built into it. So when it points up at the sky, it has a rough idea of what's at because it knows my GPS location, knows the time. It points up at the sky, it will say, well, I should be seeing these kinds of stars, and it has what the star map looks like. It focuses on the image, gets a pattern, and then does what's called plate resolving. It says, here's what I see that most closely matches, and it goes through all the pictures it has of the stars, it most closely matches this star field. So I must be pointing right at such and such, declination such and such. So plate resolving, you can get plate resolving right now on the internet, and I'll talk about how you can do plate resolving right now using an image. Post it to the internet, and it will actually go through a database on the internet, and we'll do plate resolving and then tell you exactly what you're looking at. And I'll show you when I looked at the Coma Berenices cluster of galaxies, it located all those galaxies for me. It was amazing when I did that. But Stellina doesn't do all of that. All she does is say, I know enough stars to know where you're pointing by the image that I see. So it does that plate resolving inside using its Raspberry Pi computer. There's image stacking is the next thing. The images are 10 seconds long each, unless it's a planetary object, which it's about a 1 second exposure. But everything else to deep sky is 10-second exposures, which means you get a very grainy images. You got a lot of noise. But you start stacking together, so you start putting all of these images together, and then actually before you stack, you get your first images. You look at the quality, look at how round the stars are. If the stars aren't round, Stellina rejects the image, takes another picture. So she goes through and takes, and you can, if you want her to run 2 hours, she'll run 2 hours, collecting images every 10 seconds, looking at each one and go, keep, go the other way, keep, go the other way. And every 10 seconds, you'll get an updated image of what your telescope sees. And it is an amazing telescope. It's like I said, robotic. It's amazing to see this happen. But when you're done, you end up with less graininess, less noise. You reject all the hot, all the pixels that were hot for just a moment, and then a moment later or not. I've had an image where a satellite went through in one of the images. It was a good image, so Stellina kept it, but she kept stacking up images after image after image without the satellite, and the satellite image faded out over time. So pretty amazing. Okay, next. Okay, runs with that. There is no eyepiece on this telescope. Everybody's used to, I get a telescope, I'm gonna look through, I'm gonna see this. That doesn't happen. You get an app, you turn it on, and you talk to Stellina through Wi-Fi, and you turn on your GPS, your location, so Stellina can get the location. She'll figure out where she's at, what the time is, and she'll do everything from there. And then the images show up on your cell phone. The nice thing is that up to 20 people can have cell phones connected to the Stellina, with one person will be in control, so they're not fighting over who's going to drive the Stellina. One person's in control. But you will, I don't want this. So you don't want that. But the thing is that if people will install the Stellina, so if you do a star party, take the Stellina out there, people have the app on their cell phones, they can all go out and just while they're looking through different telescopes, check their cell phone app every once in a while, see what the image looks like as it builds up every 10 seconds. And real quickly, can we real quickly go to this website? I wanted to see see
Is
that
the
video.
link in the, what is the link in the presentation?
It's you have to just copy and paste this text here. You may have to stop the presentation so you can, there we go. The problem is I try to put these links in, and when I go to different places to present, the links work or doesn't work. It's always like not a shot. It is a C shot, or it's just random whether it works or not.
Oh, I need to do something first before we play it. Hold on. Oh, okay.
Oh, really? Did they? Oh, that must have been because I used this a month ago. Okay.
Well, I may be copying it off something else.
Okay.
Give me the exact name again.
Okay.
Stellina.
Telescope. And then there is a how to use video. It's on YouTube. How to use video. How to use.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. It'll be just a minute or two long. Now, don't want to do the reviews. There is a. They did.
Right here.
Let's see. I think this is the one I did right. Yeah, I think this is the one right here. I think this is it. This tutorial. I think that's the one I did.
Oh, I gotta stop again. I'm sorry. I forgot to do something.
Okay.
I haven't used Zoom in a long time. So.
We are not allowed to use it at the school district. We have to use Google because people Zoom bomb us, and we can't have that with the.
And that's why I announced it so late. So, but I think Tim would like to hear the sound, so I have to.
Phone plan by Google. It's easy to switch to Fi from the comfort of your home.
Oh, myself. I got it.
In this video, we'll show you how to install your Stellina step by step. To begin, get the tripod, lift the sliding stops, open the legs completely, and set them on the second setting.
This is a graphite tripod.
Use the locking lever to loosen the flat base. To do this, push in the black lever until it covers the screw and turn it upwards. Release and repeat several times. Gently place Stellina on the tripod until you hear a click. To secure the Stellina on the tripod, use the locking lever to tighten the flat base. To do so, push in the black lever until completely covering the screw and turn it downward. Release and repeat several times. Check the tripod's bubble level plate and screw and unscrew the tripod's feet if necessary. Stellina comes with an external battery called Power Bank delivering 10,000 mAh and allowing you to use Stellina about 5 hours, a cable to charge the battery, and a USB-C and USB-A cable. To open the battery compartment, press the top of the hatch by positioning your finger on the raised dot. Connect the battery to Stellina. To do so, insert the USB-C end in the port located in the compartment and plug the USB-A end in the port of your power bank. Turn your battery on if necessary and place it in the compartment. The power button will start flashing slowly, meaning Stellina is in standby mode. To close the hatch, first place the bottom of the hatch and then clip the top with a slight pressure. Press the power button for 2 seconds. The button will start spinning quickly. This is the startup phase, which can last up to 1 minute. Wait until the LED stays still. Stellina is then ready to use, and you'll be able to find its Wi-Fi network on your mobile settings.
And you use the hotspot to do it with?
Download Stellina app from your app store. It may be necessary to connect to the Wi-Fi to download it, as the app is more than 150 megabytes.
How do you do Wi-Fi?
Launch the app, accept the photos and GPS access settings, and create an account. It's necessary to be connected to an internet network to do so. Click on the Connect to Stellina button. Make sure that Stellina is turned on and follow the startup guide. Go to your phone settings and look for the Stellina wireless network. It can take up to a minute to appear. Select the wireless network that corresponds to your Stellina. Note that for iOS devices equipped with 4G, you can disregard the message, "No internet connection." If you have access to 4G, it will work normally and you will be able to stay connected to the internet. However, for Android devices, depending on the tablet or smartphone used and the Android version used, the message "Connected, no internet access" may appear. In this case, you won't be able to be connected to the internet while using Stellina. Return to the Stellina app. Stellina is now ready to work. If you have good night sky conditions, launch Stellina's initialization.
I'll kind of run through this also.
When you've finished your observations, there are two ways to turn your Stellina off. Press the on-off button for 2 seconds, or click on the button Sleep Mode in the first tab of the mobile app. Stellina's optical arm will automatically close. The LED button will flash slowly to indicate that the device is in standby mode. Unplug the battery cable in order to completely switch off Stellina. To remove the tripod from Stellina, use the locking lever to loosen the flat base. To do so, push in the black lever until completely covering the screw and turn it downward. Release and repeat several times. Place Stellina on a flat surface with the tripod in a vacuum. Press the button under the tripod to detach it from Stellina. If you also wish to remove the flat base and the bubble level plate from Stellina, for example to install another tripod, unscrew the screw located under the base of Stellina using the hex key provided in the Gitso tripod box.
I'll try and go through this. It's all robotic, like this.
Those emotions, they were put on hold by time,
No, we're not doing that.
like careers they do.
Okay, this is the app in French. There's the English version, so you don't have to read French to be able to use it. Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you, here's an example we got. Now, I've done some astrophotography before. I have set up a tripod, I've set up a camera, I've used bulb, I've set up, focus and taken, 5-10 minute exposures. Okay. That's the limit of what I've done with cameras in the past of doing astrophotography. Now, using Stellina, I've taken her outside, set her up. I stay inside the house, having some iced tea while I'm going through the cell phone app, and Stellina's outside. Okay. This is a picture of M51. This is like a 30-minute exposure using Stellina. And I didn't have to pull her line. I didn't have to stay out there and do guidance or anything like that. I stayed inside the house with the lights off, but I stayed in the house with the cell phone and I watched this image get developed. And every 10 seconds, minus every time when an image went bad, I would stack up and get these images here. So that's a picture I've got of M51, just sitting in the house 30 minutes. Okay, next.
I just wanted to point out, is that a dwarf galaxy to the
So this right
to the
here,
left?
yeah,
To the
this
left?
is this to the left.
That fat star there.
I don't know. I have to go. Take a
It
look.
looks like there are
Okay.
some out there, but
However, you
I've
can
never, that would tell you how good it is, if that
This
is.
would be, you could do plate resolving on this one, and it would tell you for sure.
Okay.
Plate resolving on this, I'll tell about that. Okay, this is Andromeda Galaxy. And also when you do Stellina, she has a list of 200 objects in her database. Okay, if you want to look at something different, and I have looked at things that are different, you can actually go to Stellina and you can create your own entries. So I have a picture, I'll show a picture of a quasar I've taken. But that's done variable stars. That's all. You can program that into the app. You don't have to rely just on the 200 objects that they provide. Plus, there's updates to this every once in a while, and they keep increasing the number of objects that look in the database.
That image right there, that was the image taken with a camera and with Stellina.
No, that's just Stellina all by herself.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right.
You haven't, must allow you to do your own post-processing.
Yes, you can, and I'll talk about that in just a minute.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll talk about, yeah. This
Because
is,
there's a whole lot more to see than that.
that's right, yeah, this is the JPEG image you get, they get sent to your cell phone. I'll talk about what's on the jump drive.
Thank
That's in there. And yes, that's right, you can do a lot more post, you can do it all. Yeah, she does she does a lot of processing on her. So this is a short image taken of Andromeda Galaxy. This is only the nucleus. You're starting to see the dust trails here. And I can actually move the image around a little bit, and I can find M110, M32. I can find the other objects, and I'll show you this, what I did, because I actually said, go to this galaxy. Now, I want you to adjust up and down just a little bit, and I was photographing.
One other question, is that a result of some several stacked images, or is that a single image?
This is stacked every 10 seconds stacked. I think it's about 30 minutes or so.
Okay, that's
20
fine.
minutes. Yeah, what's that?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then probably 2/3 of the images were good, and 1/3 of them or so were rejected. So I give you an idea. So every minute, 6 images, unless something bad, bright light or something, Stellina will reject it, or gust or shakes the telescope, something that's in the stars get blurred for just a moment, Stellina will reject those images. Okay.
And are you able to manipulate those settings or those?
That's all built in. It's all robotic. You don't change anything. But there's other things you can do with post-processing I'll talk about. Okay, next. Okay, Sombrero Galaxy. I mean, I've seen pictures of this. I was like, I love this galaxy.
Yeah.
And this is a 3-inch telescope. Take a picture of Sombrero. Dust fell through here, through the equator of the galaxy here. Okay, next. Edge on Galaxy. I forgot which one this was. One of this, that could be the needle. Yeah, there's one of the companion galaxies that go with it. And there's another companion right here, I believe it was. I'll have to, when you look at when you look at a screen on your cell phone, or if you do on a laptop or PC, it's a little bit better than what you can project.
Well, may I interrupt something, Paul? On this image, that image as expected. So for those who are watching this on Zoom, the image we are seeing in the room blows away probably what you may be seeing on the tablet. It blows away what I'm looking at here.
Okay.
So.
Okay, next. Trifid Nebula. I mean, a color image of Trifid, and I didn't have to do anything there. I had no color filters or anything like that. And I once saw Trifid in color through a telescope. It was a telescope of a 29-inch mirror. Wow. Made by Coulter Optical back in like 1981. So this is an image that just, again, I don't know, this might be an hour or something like that, right? Here's the thing with this. I took this was taken a couple months ago. I took this picture, told Stellina to take this picture, I went to bed. I got up 2 hours later, set my alarm, got up 2 hours later, and I got this image. I was asleep while Stellina was doing the work. I didn't. Now, the problem is my sleep is disrupted. I go to work the next day, and I keep getting up every 2 hours for 10 or 20 minutes to change the telescope. But you can go to sleep while this is being done. Plus, there's an upgrade coming that you won't even have to disrupt your sleep. So I'll talk about that also. Okay, next. So like I said, the great thing about this telescope is it's robotic. You can change the way it works with just a software upgrade. Veil Nebula. Again, in color, I mean, I've seen Veil through my 8-inch telescope and through a 16-inch, and it's kind of gray, wispy cloud. That's nice to see, but to get a color image is pretty amazing. Plus, if you look carefully, there's a few more, the stars are a little more dense here than it is outside. That's showing you is this is supernova explosion 10,000 or so years ago, right? As that gas rushes out, it starts clearing out some of the dust and gases in the interstellar medium. So the sky, or the air, or the space is a little more transparent inside this bubble than it is outside the bubble. So you can start to see that with images like this. But again, this was one. I don't know if I stayed up for this one or not. I just programmed Stellina, and I go to bed, tell her what to do, and I go to bed. It's amazing. Owl Nebula. This one I remember I stayed up for, and I just watched it. I watched it develop. Again, it was pretty quick, 30 minutes or so, and I'm starting to see it's an owl. I'm not sure for sure if this is the central star now, or if this happens to be a foreground object or not. But that could be the white dwarf that's creating this planetary nebula. Okay, next. Dumbbell is pretty bright. It's pretty intense and pretty bright. So this is a pretty fast image to bring this up. And again, I've seen it through a telescope before, but it's kind of gray, wispy. And here I'm getting reds and greens. So, I mean, it's just, I believe the green is from forbidden light and oxygen, if I remember correctly. The red may be from hydrogen. So we're seeing, some of the gases inside of this, this remnant, this planetary nebula from a solar mass type star that ended its life by puffing out its outer atmosphere. It will photograph solar system objects. So the moon, these are objects. These are pictures I took of the moon during three different nights. First quarter, third quarter, full moon. That's the image that Stellina took. I didn't have to do anything. I just said, turn her on. I want you to go find the moon, take a picture, and now moon images or images of the solar system are returned every they get updated about every second. Stellina does not stack those images. But I can see where that could be an upgrade in the future. Also, the problem was when you've got a crescent moon, because your exposures are so short, crescent moons are very faint. And I think right now, until they do an upgrade or do a change to the way it works, you'll want to stack your own images of the crescent moon. The first quarter full moon, the images are plenty bright, they're good. And I didn't have to focus this. The telescope was all the focusing itself. I've taken pictures of the moon before, and I never get a good focus. And Stellina does it for me. I just sit back with my iced tea and it gets done. It's amazing. Next. Stellina is not really designed as a solar system telescope. Okay, the magnification is only 400 millimeter, but the magnification is not enough. It's not enough. That's Jupiter and Saturn. I can see the rings. I can see the belts. That's all you'll see. This is an example where probably you want to do some post-processing imaging, start collecting a bunch of images every second, save the image, save the image, save the image, and then do the stacking yourself to try to bring up the resolution.
Now, what's the file format?
So what I did is a JPEG on my cell phone.
Okay.
But on top of the other files, but Stellina does save a TIFF file. So rather than 8-bit, it's 16-bit. It's a much deeper image. But it looks black because your monitors can't project the TIFF image well. You got to kind of work on how to display it. It also stores FITS files. And FITS is a standard used by NASA for doing imaging, and which is a non-loss system. But there's a learning curve to learn to handle FITS.
Does it take raw images?
The raw images would be your FITS images.
Okay.
They'll be your FITS image. And I've taken a look, I've got a FITS imager. I've looked at one image, and it's grainy. The camera images every 10 seconds are noisy. There's a lot of processing that goes on when you start stacking.
There's so much more data in
That's
this
right.
image.
That's right, yeah. That's right. Yeah. JPEG is very lossy.
Yeah.
I looked at this and it's like, oh, I can see the rings, but you go to the FITS image, you're going to get these images a lot more detail there, but you're going to have to learn to do stacking and some post-processing. Stellina will do the basics for you, but again, it's all software driven. So if you look at what it looks like now, a year from now, 2 years from now, who knows, they're going to give you an update to the software, and she'll do even more stacking with planetary objects, for instance. It could be something in the future.
So no AVI or SER for say, lucky imaging.
That's right.
So there isn't that.
Yeah, you got FITS though that has all the information. So FITS is where you have all the information, but most people don't have FITS viewers, but you can use Astro Image J. I'll talk a little bit about that to handle FITS files and do stacking and stuff like that. Okay, next. Okay, Quasar. We'll stop right here. This 3C273, that's a quasar 2.6 or 2.7 billion light years away. All I did is I pulled up on Google. I said, well, I want to look at this quasar. It gave me the red ascension declination. I went to Stellina. It's not in her database. I said, good, I want you to create this. 3C273 is red ascension declination. It's stored. I can now take the telescope at any time when Virgo's out and just say, go find this quasar for me. The history about this quasar, this is the first quasar that was actually located. They detected the radio waves, but they couldn't identify the star because the radio telescope didn't have enough resolution to pin it down. They waited until sometime in 1964 for the moon to pass over the object and cut off the radio signal coming from it. And look at when it disappeared and reappeared, gave you an intersection of the edges of the moon that told you where this was located. And when they did that, they found that the displays are 2.6 billion light years away, traveling at 16% the speed of light because of expansion due to the universe. And at that point, this was, how is this amazing thing so bright and so far away? Which eventually led to active galactic nuclei and black holes in the centers of quasars, of galaxies. So this led to a lot of cosmology we have today. It's the discovery of 3C273. And next. Okay, I got 3 globular clusters here. Again, I've seen these through the telescope. When I see hazy, I see modeling of stars. That's how it looks kind of cool. Large telescope looks like a pile of salt on velvet, really kind of cool. Take Stellina out and say, get an image, 20 minutes later, this is what I get.
And that's got to be 13, right?
I think that's 13. I have 13, M4, and M22. M22 will be the largest.
You can see the little galaxy, I think it's 6207
Okay,
or 6210 right off.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
That's how you tell.
That's okay, yeah. That's M22. This M22 is largest. Now, I took this picture. The sky's a little hazy, and I've got the background's not quite as black. And that's because I was in a hurry. I could not wait for another night for the skies to get clear. So I took a picture and stacked for like 30 minutes or so. And you end up with the JPEG file, you end up with skies not being black because there's haze or cloud, or a little bit of cloudiness in the sky.
So it does affect them.
What's that?
Cloud cover and smoke.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And so right now, images aren't so great because you do have that haziness. You expose, longer and longer will darken out, and it doesn't completely darken out. So you really want clear skies to do this.
You should see it on this monitor. You could definitely tell the difference.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. And then this is M4. So a little bit clearer night. Again, this is the JPEG. You can get the TIFF file, which is even better. And then you can easily do some manipulation with that. And you can get the FITS files where you can start doing your own stacking, do your own processing, and you'll get even better still. But you're going to, rather than take the telescope out 20 minutes, get the image, you're going to take 20 minutes of images and then spend maybe 2 hours the next morning doing the stacking, which is great. But it's a whole new level. But you can do it with the Stellina. Okay, next. So this is so one thing I want to do is look at measuring the brightness of variable stars. So this is a star right here. This is a variable. I have to go look it up again, and it's changed brightness. So take it over some different nights, and I can actually use what's a program called AstroImage-J, which came from ImageJ, which is a program written by the National Institute of Health, so that scientists would all have the same image processing software to do their image processing. So for instance, they would take pictures through a telescope, through a microscope, and the software would count cells for you, or would identify the nuclei of cells for you. So the software does stuff like that. Someone has taken it, written in applications or code to do astronomical imaging. So if you use AstroImage-J, it's free software, and it does your astronomy processing for you for astronomy. And astronomers are using the program, using programs like AstroImage-J, so they're all using the same software when they process their data. And I could do something called aperture measurement. I have to double check the word. But anyhow, it measures the aperture, the size of the image, and then you give it other stars. And it will tell you that, and you say, well, this star is 10th magnitude, this is 10.5, this is 9.5. Now, what's the magnitude of this star? By measuring the aperture, the size of the image, it will give you an estimate of the magnitude of the star. Use that data, and then I can actually create a light curve for a variable star. So that's using AstroImage-J to do that. Okay, back in June, we had a lunar eclipse. I said, great, I'm taking the Stellina out, I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to take a picture of it every minute, I'm going to make a movie. About 10 minutes into the eclipse, the cards came up and put it into that. So this was 3 images I took during the night. You can see the shadows slowly creeping across. My goal will be, next time we have, so this is in November, I think we have one in November, so next lunar eclipse. I'm going to put the Stellina out. In November will be cold, that's fine. I will be inside with some hot tea with my cell phone, getting images. Every minute I'll just say, save. Okay, save. It's been a minute. Okay, save. Oh, it's been a minute. Save. I'll just do that for 2 hours or whatever. When I'm done, I'll end up with all these images, and then I'll use a program that will stack them just to make a movie. And I will actually make a movie of the eclipse, and it will show, and the moon will probably bob around just a little bit because the telescope's got to track it, so you need a little bit of adjustment as it keeps following it. But you'll be able to watch the moon, or the shadow move across the moon, and I'll actually have a movie on that. So I'm looking forward to doing something like that. What do asteroids? So there's an asteroid here. The asteroid Vesta is in here. Can you find it? 2 images. Where's Vesta at? So here's Vesta right here. And not here. So it was here one day. I tried to photograph it on the 11th, and it was cloudy. But yeah, Vesta is not in Stellina's database, but that's okay. I just went to it wasn't Google in this case here. I went to another website and I said, "Where's the location of Vesta?" And it gave me the ephemeris of the asteroid's location. I programmed it in Stellina, and then it said, "Okay, I want you to take a picture of here." And I said, "Take a picture for 5 minutes." After 5 minutes, save the image, and I've got the asteroid one day, and it's not here the next day. But there's software, ASTAP, that actually will blink images for you. So I could actually use, so rather than me search for it, I could actually use the software to blink images, compare images to find asteroids. Now, the thing about this is I went specifically looking for Vesta. So I knew where Vesta was at. I could potentially, I'm a high school teacher. I'm not teaching astronomy this year. I taught astronomy 2 years ago. I could tell my students, you're going to do a project where you're going to take a picture of a particular part of the sky. You tell me where, and we're going to take a picture every night. I'll be every 5-minute picture I'll get every night. We'll get them after a week. Here's your 5 images. Run the software and you look for stars that change their positions. They can then identify an asteroid that way, or potentially a planet or something. But they would, what's that? Pluto. Yeah, Pluto would be a good one. Pluto and Neptune would be good. But you could in fact do Pluto, and you're doing exactly what Tombaugh did in 1930 when he discovered Pluto. So do that, and you can actually do the blink comparisons in software and locate.
And that also sounds like something that I know the Planetary Society is part of their NEO program. I forget the name of the grant. They give out grants, and I think you might be able to get a grant to do something like that. They would love it, the data you get off that.
So, okay, next. Okay, astrometry. So if you go to astrometry.net, that's how you pronounce it?
Huh?
How do you pronounce it?
Astrometry.
Astrometry. Okay, astrometry.net. Give it an image. It will then spend a few minutes and come back and give you this chart back. It'll say it's the plate resolving. So I take a picture of yeah. So I take the picture of the Copernicus.
This is good. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
But I went to Google and I said, Copernicus cluster of galaxies. What's the right ascension declination? Plugged it in. I've got it in my database. I said, take a picture. I did like a 20-minute picture or something like this. Oh, I can see some galaxies. That's kind of cool. And I then sent this image to astrometry.net. And probably 5 or 10 minutes later, it came back with this. It's circling all of these galaxies there. There's probably like 4 dozen galaxies there. Yeah. There's close to 50 galaxies in here. 1 degree by 0.7 degrees. And I've got those galaxies are working. This should be a really interesting picture to make into an 8 by 10 and hang up hang up on the wall.
This is still a free site, isn't it?
That's right. This is a free site. Yeah, it's all free. If it's not free, I don't do it. So, yeah, I'm looking for all the free stuff. But it will. So like I don't know what I'm looking at, or I know where I'm at, but I don't know where all the galaxies are. Or what's this star? There's Henry Draper catalog that starts at like magnitude 9.5. And it will pull up in. None of those stars are there. I mean, there's no HD. I don't think there's an HD in there. But I can look up and say, hey, this is HD 145, 276. I can go look up, get the magnitude, and then use that to try to analyze the image. Or go to a cluster of galaxies and bam, oh, it'll circle all the galaxies. So Copernicus cluster of galaxies, sort of 500 million light years away. It's beyond the Virgo cluster of galaxies. Okay. So it does store images as TIFF files. It's the stacked image, but it's TIFF, so it's higher quality. You just have to manipulate the image a little bit. You get a good image of it. But also it stores every image as a FIPS file. So the TIFF is going to be, so you got a JPEG that goes to your cell phone. That's the final step. You got the TIFF version of the JPEG, that's the final image, but it's higher quality, you can mess around with if you like to do that. Or go to the jump drive, this is all saved on the jump drive, this is a jump drive that plugs in here. In fact, there's 2 jump drive slots, which is good because FITS files are big, and you're getting one every 10 seconds. So go through the structure of how the files are saved, get your JPEGs, they're saved as like JSON, JSON files, I think it's the last, is the qualifier. But you'll have one for every 10 seconds. So if you do a 1 hour run, you're talking about 600 files you're going to download. And then you can do all the stacking yourself. You can do all that stuff yourself. And in fact, the images it takes a while it's focusing, those are saved also as FITS files also. So if you want to look at how it focused, you can do that also. But your images were all saved as JPEG on the cell phone, as a TIFF as a higher quality TIFF image on Stellina, and then all of the images that it took are stored as FITS files if you want to do your own post-processing. And this is why I need to learn how to use Astro Image J, because I don't know how to stack yet. I played around with it a little bit, and the learning curve is like, let's go straight.
Yeah, I'll second that, but I think if I remember correctly, AIJ also has an interface into that astrometry.net.
That's what I think so, that's right, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right, yeah.
I found it very useful at times.
Yeah, that's what they call, that's correct.
What's it do about dark and
So,
field flat?
yeah, so what you'll have to
field?
do, what you have to do for your dark files, I've been told is that what you do is you make a cover for Stellina and you cover up the lens, and you'll get your dark files that way.
So you do have to create a dark library.
That's right.
Does it cool the imager?
With one single image, just single
No,
image.
does it cool the imager?
Oh, just not. No. Oh, actually, let me back up. There's a fan inside, but it doesn't go any cold, anything more than just on the fan.
Yeah, no thermo.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then flats, I think what you have to do is there's tricks that people are doing. I believe you just put up some white paper, and evenly illuminate, or get a LED flat screen.
Or a white t-shirt.
White, yeah, there you go.
White t-shirt during the day.
That's right. And you'll actually Stellina will not image during the day, because you'll know it's daytime, and I'm not going to take a risk of imaging the sun. So you'll have to do it at night, and people are working out ways to do that. But the nice thing is this is all done in software. So what happens eventually, the owners, the company manufacturers, will do updates and get you the ability to do that. It'll be in the advanced mode that they're coming out with, and you'll be able to get those images if you want to do.
So their stacker probably doesn't use flat field and
That's right.
dark libraries.
That's right. That's right.
You have to do that yourself.
That's right. You have to do that yourself. That's right. But again, you can do that. You can do that. That option is there. It's just maybe in the more advanced mode to do that.
So how often would you probably have to download all the data from that so that you're not overwhelming the
I did a 32 gig jump drive, and I think I only had images from like 7 or 8 objects. So so we're talking probably 4 hours of imaging or something like that. But there's 2 jump drives. And that's right. If you want to do it, I would take images for one night, pull the jump drive, download the images, and then put the jump drive back in. Because you will run out of space.
Yeah.
Again, because FITS files are so large, and there's one every 10 seconds. So it uses up space for that.
Well, actually, TIFFs are bigger.
Is that?
TIFFs are usually bigger.
just a bigger?
See, the TIFFs are bigger than FITS because they separate the color plane. So you basically did it 3 times larger.
Okay. Now with the FITS though, could you do the separation yourself?
Right.
Yes.
FITS, you do it yourself.
That's right. Yeah, you do this. And I've done that with a regular digital camera, looking at how white cherries work. And we separate out the different colors, green from red to blue. So again, it's going to be maybe something I do when I retire. I don't know if I have time to learn how to use this software. It's going to take some time to do that. Mosaic images. So here's the thing. Remember, Stellina takes an image that's only 1 degree by 0.7 degrees. And if you look at Andromeda Galaxy, that's like the core of Andromeda. You don't see anything else. They just, earlier this year, back in the spring, they released this image here where they actually had programmed Stellina to do mosaicing. So this is southern hemisphere. The Stellina took several pictures and then she mosaicked all the images together herself. So she could run the program and then just say, I want to mosaic this whole area, and she'll do the whole thing for you. Again, that is the advanced version of the app. It's not available yet, but they released it and said, here's what we're working on. So they can put images together like this. I thought I would try to do this myself. So I went ahead and went to, this is just recently, this is last week. So I went and got 3 pictures of Andromeda. I need to get more, probably 9 to kind of get all of them, because I want to do the Andromeda and then do like 8 around it. And then I could go further if I want to, or I could program in coordinates and go further if I want. So I took these images of Andromeda, so you can see, the core, M32, M110, so I got those, and then these are just the JPEG files. I'm not even working with TIFF files yet. So okay, let me just take those and I'll put them into Microsoft Paint, and I came up with this image here. So I put it together, that's what I did when I try to stack all 3 together. And you say my stacking is not perfect, I'm a little off across here, so there's a line through. So eventually, I'll probably do this with the TIFF file, but I went and did the stacking myself. Took a few minutes using Microsoft Paint to do this. So it's kind of cool that I can start doing some of what Stellina does. What I would do next is just expose longer so you see more of the galaxy out here. And probably eventually start doing this with the TIFF files. I want to use TIFF files. Here's NCG206. This is a star forming region in Andromeda. So this is the core because the rest of the galaxy comes out this far here. So I got to do some deeper exposures, darker skies, no smoke, TIFF file to start with before I start learning to do FITS files. So I do the stacking myself. I'm seeing using the FITS files and learn how to manipulate that. It's going to be 5% grade. So using the FITS files and start stacking is like a 50% grade on this is going to be. It'd be great, but this is going to take some time to get around. Okay. So what are the upgrades that they're talking about doing? And they thought they would be out this summer. Summer's almost over, we'll say. But they want to do programmed observations. And this is from email. I've actually talked to Leonis, one of the reps, about this. I said, hey, look, I use Stellina. I get it every 2 hours. I download the image. I tell her to go to the new location. I'd like to program in observations. He says, oh, we're working on it. That's going to be advanced mode. So soon, I will be able to talk to Stellina. Before I go to bed, I'll talk to Stellina and say, okay, for 2 hours, I want you to image this. Then for an hour, I want you to move here and image this. And I want you to refocus yourself. This is the temperature changes, the focus changes. And if the temperature drops 3 degrees, you get a message on your cell phone saying, you might want to refocus. And you can tell someone to stop, refocus, and I'll do some more imaging. So she keeps track of the temperature. And when she gets to that 3 degree range, she'll say, hey, look, focus is probably been compromised. I want you to have me refocus.
It does that now, or?
It does it right now. So right
Okay,
now.
so it does autofocus when you go to a new object.
Well, no, I have to tell her to do it.
But you have
I
to
don't
tell
have to tell her. But she gets me a message saying, you might want me to refocus.
so every time you go to an object, you should
She'll just
refocus.
refocus, that's right. If the temperature doesn't change, I just say, go for it, let's go. But exactly right. You can recalibrate and you can do that. So the advanced mode, you would do that. You say, go to here, photograph 2 hours, go to here, reinitialize yourself, photograph for an hour. Then for 3 hours after this, I want you to go here, refocus, and image here. Then I would get up in the morning, download the images, and then go off to work. So robotic telescope can run anything for you. So that's one of the things that they're trying to, that they are planning to do the update with is this robotics, this robotic programming, which I think is really cool. If a bunch of people at Stellinas across the world, they kind of coordinate their observations and then share data. Okay. Solar filter, they do have the solar filter, and they're going to program this thing to operate during the daytime, but you'll have the solar filter built for the telescope. I've been told this will be available by 2024. I thought it's supposed to be this year, but by 2024, because there's a solar eclipse going from Texas to Kentucky to someplace else. I plan to be retired, and I plan to take Stellina with me. I'm going to do a balloon launch during the eclipse, and I'm going to leave this in someone's backyard I can trust, and Stellina will make images every minute throughout the eclipse, so I can make a movie of the eclipse. So that's going to be my plan. They are coming off the solar filter, and they're working with it. Okay, so the Stellina, I mean, this is pretty close. As I said, well, this is kind of amazing telescope. We're looking at what people are saying. I sells it 4.8 out of 5 stars. Sky Telescope says, what's the best telescope? Well, best telescope is the telescope that you use. Stellina is the telescope you use. University today said that the Stellina was the first telescope that actually worked out of the box as advertised. And I can attest to that. I set it up. It took me just a few minutes to learn how to do this, and I was imaging that night. It was amazing. And I thought, again, with this is how it all started. This is how it's going. I think we're going to find more robotic telescopes out there. Leonis has the Stellina. They're coming out with a smaller version. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. Vespera. Stellina means little star in the time. So Vespera. They're kind of the smaller one. It's only 2-inch, but does the same kind of thing. And I suspect that because right now this is kind of expensive. It's like getting an Apple. So Apple products are always expensive, and everybody else then makes copies and price goes down. So I think we're going to find this is the first ones that come out. More people are going to produce telescopes like this. The price will go down, and people will have telescopes like this in their backyard. Doing the astro photography for them. And you're going to walk into the house. In fact, you walk into my house. There's a wall of pictures that Stellina has taken of astronomical objects. I think that is the last slide. So if there's any questions, I'm going to go ahead and power up so you can see.
How much?
There's $4,000
Right now?
right now. Yes, right. Yeah. And again, the reason why I have it is my father passed on about inheritance, so I spurred some of the money on a telescope. So. And I didn't want just to give money on a telescope. So side panel. And then, if you guys want to come on up, take a look inside.
I'm gonna play with the camera to get the focus to work.
Okay. No worries, you're gonna look at it too, so.
Well, I can't come out any further.
Okay, so it gets this is made with carbon fiber, which is lightweight and strong. Then the optical assembly here, I've got a connector with a USB-C that I plug into the battery. And I just quick question on USB. So the U in USB means universal. Why do I have so many different USB A's, B's, C's, minis, micros? It's like, what is this? I thought it was supposed to be universal, right?
Because you got Apple. That's one
It's
reason.
about
marketing.
And they were Apple so big to have their own,
Yeah,
so what USB-C is not Apple now.
So then, okay. So I just don't understand why do they call it universal when it's not?
Yeah.
Universal. Yeah, what the heck? So plug in the battery. This is the battery I got. 10 milliamp hour, 10,000, 10 amp hours, 10 milliamp hours. Okay, you can plug it in, you can put the panel back on. Okay, you've got 2 places here for jump drives. So you plug in your jump drive here, and this is what you can store your data on. Because you'll get your JPEG on your cell phone. If you want anything more than the JPEG, it goes on the jump drive, which is good because if you've got 100 megabytes of files, last thing you want to do is be transferring that over a cell phone when you want to go do something else. It stores it all there. Then this is the one thing people complain about, and I can understand this. The light is blue. Okay, rather than red, it's a blue light. Blue is cooler. The blue does look cooler, but it's like, what happens to your night vision? Okay, so now I'm going to start my cell phone.
So I think it just demonstrates these things are not designed by astronomers.
Okay.
They're designed by tech people.
Okay. Yeah. And also, if you kind of think about it, since you're looking at your cell phone for the image, I guess it doesn't care what your night vision is. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn on Wi-Fi and turn on location. Turn on Wi-Fi. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Then I'm going to do the start button here. So hold it for 2 seconds. And it does the cool wrap around. That's kind of nice. Then we run the Stellina app. And the Stellina app is just black with a blue circle on it. So we're going to click that. And it brings up the app. Okay, it says connect now. So it says you're not connected. Okay, that's good. Connect now. Turn the Stellina on. I did that. Okay, go to Wi-Fi settings. And okay, it says I'm connected. Connected, no internet access. No, etc. Because this is not a Wi-Fi route. This is not a hotspot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I've got it connected to this, and now I can go back. And okay, now initialize. Okay, so I can initialize but there's nothing to initialize on this, we're indoors or stuff. So I would just say, that's fine, I'm just inside, I just want to open up Stellina for maintenance, so go ahead and open up Stellina. So what normally I would tell it to initialize, it'll do this whole thing, but it will start imaging and whatnot for it. It would actually, first off, is get the GPS location off my cell phone. And then position itself.
Oh, you got
Over
it.
your legs. Okay.
So you're gonna have to have a table anywhere to take it.
No, actually, I just said on the ground.
You can?
Yeah, I just said on the ground.
Oh, this is amazing.
Mhm.
This is amazing.
I just said on the ground. So last night I was at Silver Reservoir, and I just put this in front of the car in case someone would hold up, like they wouldn't hit my telescope, they hit my car first.
I mean, I have your own man. Yeah.
So that's all, that's. No, good telling you, sleep. now. So-
Ouch.
Okay, I'll just tell you to shut down, there's just nothing I do right now. Normally, if it were dark, we were outside, there's dark and there's stars, but I think it's not dark yet, and I think we're gonna end up with smoke covered and stars, yeah.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, I may take any kind of questions.
What's the focal length? Do you have one focal length or can you interchange focal length?
One focal length, it's a 400 millimeter, it's an F, it's a, it's an 80 millimeter lens, F5, with 400 millimeter focal length.
How did you get M51 though, the way you do? Typically, I mean, with a normal telephoto lens and a camera, you need at least 800 to 1200 millimeters to see M51.
So
So if you got a doubler on there or some type of a magnification
no,
process?
no doubler. It is just based on the imager and the focal length on this.
Very small pixels.
Right,
He
right,
said
yeah.
it was 1/100 second. per
Yeah,
pixel.
one.
So they're
yeah,
just very
1
small
second.
pixels. They're like probably 2.4 micron pixels or 1.8 micron pixels, something like that.
And that's why the core of the Andromeda is so large.
That's right, yeah.
It's so big. Yeah, that's different. That's different science.
Yeah.
Really is. Different science than regular photography.
Oh, yeah.
Couple of questions, if I may. You have a maintenance issue. Do they send a tech? Do they send a tech out to work on these? Do you send it back? Or do they rarely have any problems?
So I have not had problems. I've not heard anybody having problems yet. If it was dropped or something like that, you're gonna have to keep the box. I kept my box there, put the pack in the film and send it back again. The software, I mean, you're running just literally one program on the Raspberry Pi. You're not installing different drivers and stuff like that. So I think software wise, it's a much simpler system. So once they set it up, it works and it continues to work.
Probably a firmware type.
That's right, yeah, firmware, yeah, firmware.
There's no firmware update.
Yeah, in fact, I've done one firmware update so far, since I've gotten it back in, before, I got the spec in April. I've done one firmware update so far. And one thing that showed up was 3 more objects for the database, for instance.
So do they all make these? Go ahead.
That's right, yeah, so what I'll do is,
I don't even know where this, I'm not.
yeah, so what'll happen is I would then bring up Stellina, and then I could go to Google Play, and then I can say, give me an update, if there's an update. And the last update was May 17th, 2020. Okay, so a new update, run the update here on my cell phone. Then I can connect to Stellina, and that update goes from my cell phone to Stellina. So I would get the update from Vionis. It would be everything Stellina needs. And plus what's the app. So basically 2 updates, update to the app and then update to the firmware. So I get that off of Google Play. And then when I connect to Stellina, this will say, oh, you want to update, because the app will interrogate Stellina and say, oh, I got the stuff for the update for version 1.7. Stellina has 1.6. Do you want me to do the update? So then I spend a few minutes doing the update.
That was one of my other questions. That was,
Yeah, so again, I think it's because it's not like everybody gets their own PC and they're installing 20,000 different drivers and whatnot. It's all done, designed by Vionis. It's all the same. You do the update, and everybody's source code is the same.
oh, wow.
So I think so software issues I think are easier for them to maintain. There's no tech support
Go ahead, it's your turn.
No, I was gonna say, for someone who wants to set it and forget it, then this is it. Or, I mean, approaching that.
That's right.
But I wish our illustrious past president Tim was here. Okay, he recently bought an Evo Star, is that what it's called?
Excuse me, I am here.
Oh! You have said absolutely nothing.
Yeah, so the Evo.
Well, no, I've been listening, and yes, this is.
I'd like to get your input,
Yeah, so
comparing.
yeah, so you have the Evo scope, right? The Evo scope.
Yes, I do. I have the EV scope, and actually, I did my last imaging 2 nights ago.
Okay, and with the EV scope, you have a fake eyepiece, you have an OLED you look through, right? You look through a fake eyepiece.
He was listening to you.
There, I didn't hear all of what you said, but there is an eyepiece there, and
But it's-
it creates its own Wi-Fi network, which I hook to my iPad, and then that's hooked to a large monitor. So if I have a group viewing, I've got a 24-inch monitor with whatever the scope is seeing, and then I can also capture images.
But the eyepiece, as I recall, actually it focuses on an OLED screen. So you're actually looking at a small monitor screen inside the eyepiece.
Yes, that's true. It's all electronic.
Right, okay, right. And so, yeah, so the difference here is, I think my lens is a little bit larger than the EV scope. And they don't have the eyepiece goes straight to, you have it straight to the cell phone, rather than having the fake or the pretend eyepiece that's on there for everybody to look through.
Yeah, I don't know. You said that was a 80 millimeter.
This is 80
Jack-
millimeter, yeah. What's your EV scope?
It's 4.5 inches.
Okay, so the EV scope's larger. Okay, EV scope's larger. Okay.
Sounds like Tim needs to give a rebuttal presentation. Just kidding.
No, hardly. No, I'm just fascinated. This whole generation of telescopes, you're absolutely correct. This is what's coming.
Right.
And, I've found that using that scope, I'm getting horribly spoiled. It makes me not want to pull out my 18-inch,
The EV scope, do you have to manually focus that? Does it?
There is
focus
a
it?
batten off mask for the manual focus, yes.
Okay, batten off mask. Okay. So the reason I got this is I'm trying to remember now. If I did look at the EV scope, I think I got this because it did the autofocus. I didn't have to use the batten off mask, as I recall. Yeah.
Is the EV scope comparable in price to these, or these more like 3,000?
Yeah, the EV scope's right at 3,000.
Okay. And this is about $1,000 more.
Yeah.
But you also, the EV scope, you get a larger lens, about an inch larger lens. So maybe if I get some money, I'll buy an EV scope too.
Well, if I get some money, I'll buy one of these, one of what you have, and we'll compare, right?
Good going, Tim.
Do they plan on making a bigger one? You know,
They're making a smaller one first. The Vespera is a 2.4 inch. Because the Vespera will be what they're going to release next.
I thought they were close on that.
What's that?
They were close on that, weren't they?
Oh,
Close.
yeah. In fact, they are very close on that. In fact, it may be out now. It may be out now. But it'll be like $1,500. It won't do quite as much as the Stellina will do. But I'll tell you, this is what I think the EV scope and the Stellina are like the Apple products. So wait a few years and everybody's gonna make them and they'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm just not patient enough to wait for that.
But to clarify one thing, though, this is not made in China, right?
This was designed in, I think this is actually made in France.
Thank you.
I believe this is France. However, the parts are probably made in China.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Well, the EV scope is made in Marseille, France. And I think the Stellina is made, I'm not sure where, but in France, yes.
Good. That's good.
so the EV scope actually does very similar to what these.
It does, except the EV scope, you got manual
Oh, very-
focus. Okay, thank you.
Got that, sorry about that.
So you manually focus the EV scope. I think that's why I got this clinic, because you had to manually focus. I wanted everything beyond that. But now, so I call EV scope also has something with SETI Institute, I guess, for having people monitor asteroid occultations, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's correct. They have a program for monitoring occultations of asteroids as well as observation of exoplanets.
So you now have amateurs who just basically get hooked up in a network, and across the United States they're doing all this stuff. I mean, an occultation would be great. Here's the thing with an occultation: if several people put a Stellina out, get the location and the time from the GPS, and you don't have to say, well, where was I located? Stellina will tell you where you're located and put all that data into some central site for the occultation.
So eventually you could, with the E-scope or with the Stella, you could actually build yourself a very small observatory.
Doghouse.
Yeah, a doghouse observatory, with that in it, and just simply run ready to go for the night.
That's right. And that's my plan eventually, is to build an enclosure for us. The thing is, this only runs down to 0 degrees Celsius, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So really cold nights, probably I won't be able to use this.
So you'd be moving to St. George, Utah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm thinking though, if something like that, I'd literally build a doghouse, and if it's gonna be a clear night, tip it back, and then tell them to get to the app and say, Stellina, tonight I want you to do these things. Go to bed, get up in the morning, Stellina will close herself, and I'll just close the doghouse and then go do whatever I need to do for the day. The problem with that is I'd be at school teaching, and then meanwhile looking up at my monitor to see the images that I got. Did you have anything you want to say about the EV scope?
Well, what you said about temperature is absolutely correct, because I was working with it, and it was below 0 that night, and it just didn't quite want to work very well. And I ended up talking to the people at Unistellar, and they said, oh yeah, it's really not designed to work anywhere near those temperatures. So you do have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll break it. I just think it just won't work, right?
Correct. It just won't work.
Any other questions?
Because we got 2 now you can talk to about 2 different.
Well, we may get him later on the
Okay.
EV scope, so,
When you do that, let me know for sure. I'll come in. I'm like, no, watch that.
but we can also zoom it to you too.
Okay, okay. Well, actually, if it'd be a clear night, I'd bring my Stellina, he'd bring his EV scope, and we'd put them together side by side, see how it goes.
Absolutely.
Interesting pistols at dawn.
Yeah. Well, in this case, at dusk,
The one he did would be 23 degrees outside.
Anything else for the group? Tim, can I ask a question? Were you able to hear?
Yes, I was able to hear just fine. It was a little echoey, but the presentation that was on the internet, that sound was just fine. I had no trouble hearing.
Okay, so I'll edit this and hopefully get it out to the group in about a week then. So, and if there's no other questions,
Yeah, hopefully convince people, when you look at this is the technology you want to start looking at. So this is great. You may not want to buy Stellina.
Thank you.
well then we will see you next month then. So,
For your program.
yeah.
You're giving the program?
I'm gonna either talk about light sail, or if I manage to come up with some images of Bruno, I might do something else. So Bruno's star party is the 10th and the 11th. I don't know if they're full. You'll have to contact the Boise group to see if they'll have any room. So,
That's state, Idaho State Star Party.
yeah. So, well then, if that's nothing else, thank you for coming, folks. Thank you, Dave.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thanks for the insight.